Okay. What's up,
Hey,
guys?
how you doing?
How you doing?
All right.
Good. Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
likewise.
Where are you guys coming out of?
Um, we are
Live from our office.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
It's
it looks like a makeshift scene for maybe a Star Wars, like right before the. Yeah, right on. That's
yeah,
lovely. I love
yeah.
it.
This is Matthew's in the background here somewhere. Say hi to
Hey,
Matthew.
what's up?
Matthew, if Matthew makes too much noise, I'm gonna grab a piece of metalwork and launch it at his head in the middle of the interview. So just
I love noise. That's what it's good. That's what we're dealing with. Just
right.
bending the air around. Um.
Oh,
So
yeah, to answer your question, we're in Doylestown, Pennsylvania.
okay. All right. Okay. I was always wondering, I don't how far away from Allentown are you?
Oh, close.
45
Yeah,
minutes.
45 minutes. I'll be there this weekend.
I just wonder if there's that one person when they walk into the bar and that Billy Joel song comes on, they were like, man, if I hear this thing one more time, I'm
Oh,
burning the
I make it
master
a
tape.
point. Yeah, I make it a point every time I drive through town in my convertible that I blast that song.
There you go. That's
Yeah.
what I wanted to hear
Yeah.
because in Kansas City after the Royals when we always play the Beatles version of Kansas City. So yeah, there's
Yeah.
just things that just stay true. So, well, hey guys, thank you for taking a minute out today. I was so into your work that I've already played it on the show. I typically interview, then play it, but I really am fascinated by artists that get involved with the police,
Oh,
because
cool.
there's a myriad of reasons why, but one of the things is that there was so many levels of what they were doing that were infused with jazz. There was such a backbone to what they were doing that isn't really talked about that much. So let's start there. Do you agree? Do you feel like that?
Well, look, I mean, first of all, I mean, the next thing that Sting did was alter the course of jazz.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, he that was a huge influence on us. What he did with
Dream of Blue
with
Turtles.
Branford and Kenny um and all that. And actually, uh, one thing that was a huge influence on us was this MTV thing that they used to do called Unplugged, right? So they would bring in a group and it would be all acoustic. And he went in with uh, the band after Dream of the Blue,
Yeah, yeah.
the Blue Turtles band, which was like
David
David
Sancious,
Sancious and
Monocachi,
was it
probably.
Vinny? I think it was Vinny.
Vinny.
Was playing drums and that was just absolutely mind blowing. And that actually was a model for not only jazz stuff that we did, but even some like R&B, pop stuff that we've done. Also, that's sort of morphed into other things and other facets of our careers. And Andy Summers went on to be, a bit of a fusion guitar player.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I remember when I was a kid, somebody had a police shirt on. I didn't really know that much about him, but at that time, it's so weird to think that they were really kind of on a razor's edge. They were a little bit risque at the time, and they were kind of one of those hipper underground bands before that came about. It was mainstream because of MTV, but it still wasn't. Anyway, so how did this start? Synchronicity is such an iconic recording. How did this idea get hatched and how did you run with it?
Um, a lot of the songs have bubbled around in our heads for decades, but I think uh, George had wanted to work up an arrangement of Miss Credenko. This is the abridged version, I would say, and and we spent, I mean, before I think we even introduced the drums into the mix, we spent probably hundreds of hours working on this arrangement and finally worked it up. And maybe we were playing another song off the album as well too. But I remember we had a discussion with our drummer on the way to a gig with John O'Reilly. Uh, and this was almost 10 years ago. Like, hey, what if we did this whole record? What if we covered the whole thing? And we all agreed we thought it was a great idea, but we didn't expect it would take a decade to actually kind of see the light of day.
Yeah.
So
That was the song I actually picked to put on the show, by the way.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about when you do cover an album like that. What kind of rights do you have to secure? How do you deal with the fact that you're actually putting your interpretation on something like that? How does all of that kind of work, and how long does that take? What are the logistics?
Oh, it's not a big deal nowadays.
Okay.
It's I think I did it all through Easy Song licensing or some website like that.
Okay.
Now when we just shelled out a ton of money with the power of money, anything is achievable.
That's
So
right. Yes, it is for sure. So talk to me a little bit about picking the songs and going through that process. I mean, it had to be, as you mentioned, it's an arduous process. How relieving does it feel that all of that's come together and you got a physical product and it's happening?
Very relieving. Um, well, okay, so I mean, there are songs that we do a lot of this, right? So we'll do a lot of, you know, pop or classic rock tunes, you know, with a set with a trio, or a lot of classical music. We've done a lot of classical music too that we've reset with a trio, particularly like Bela Bartok. Um, and some of these things fit our format very well. The criteria that go into choosing repertoire for us normally is probably unexpected. You know, what works and what doesn't work well for us. When we get to the point where we're saying, okay, we're going to do this entire record, then you can't say, well, we're going to leave Mother off, or we're going to leave, Every Breath You Take off, because that doesn't fit well. For those, we had to really dig deep to get them to work. And you know, I think that a lot of jazz musicians can use heavy jazz harmonies to say, okay, well, this is how I'm going to bring it into the format and make these things work. And that's great, because it's like, honestly, it's the tougher the chords are, the easier it is to weave a solo through it, you know, because these things become more defined, you know, your path becomes more defined. When you have to play over, you know, straight diatonic triads for the whole thing, that becomes pretty difficult to keep things interesting,
Yeah.
harmonically, dynamically. Um, and so doing a song like Every Breath You Take was absolutely terrifying, because
Oh, I
how are we
bet.
going to do it? I mean, we can't make it sound trite or stupid or avant-garde. And we also have to fit Sting's ideal of what that song was supposed to be, because of course it's all a big joke, right? You know, this was everybody's wedding song in 1983, 84, right? And Sting is like, look, I think you may miss the point here. This is a song about stalking, right? Um, and so we're having to walk that line too. But I think it all turned out well in the end.
Yeah. Well, the thing that gets me about the Police, that they made what they did sound rudimentary to a certain degree, but it was really complex, wasn't it? Wasn't what they were doing something that was way beyond the scope of what we were really, for the novice people that weren't musicians? They were doing some pretty intricate things, weren't they?
Well, yeah. So
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, so music is full of dichotomies like that, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, what you hear as being simple, what you perceive as being simple, is actually fantastically complicated. And in fact, we we've had one review that suggested that our arrangements are simplistic, which made me laugh. Okay, well then you play them, because these things are not
Yeah.
simplistic at all. I
Right.
mean, you know, and in fact, we had to put in our press release that these things are recorded live in our studio. We don't wear headphones. There's two microphones hung up. You know, it's going down, and whatever happens is what happens. You're hearing the performance, and a lot of the time, you know, Geoff will be plucking a note while bowing another one, and John is playing, you know, grooves with these are like egg shakers at the end of sticks and stuff, and I'm playing muted parts and carrying a melody on some things. It sounds like 6 instruments sometimes, and I wanted to make sure that nobody thought that we were doing any studio tricks or overdubs or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I was just gonna say all those parts are woven into the arrangements,
yeah. Yeah. So, particularly under the context now of us coming out of this pandemic, this has to feel good to have this project done, to have an album out, live music. I mean, is there a particular sweetness that goes into this release right now for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really know what happened the last 3 years. You
Been a
get to
blur.
be, our age, and it's like I kind of needed those 3 years. Also, I mean, we really felt derailed during the pandemic. I mean, I know musicians in general did. It was a terrible time, especially that first, year of it. It was really hard financially on everybody, and nothing, nothing's the same afterwards. Obviously, I mean, I don't have to tell you. I'm sure you've talked to so many people about this that you get just a pretty good sense of how devastating the whole thing was on the industry. So yeah, the fact that we're on the other end of it, and the sun shining again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, and it was all really, I look back and it feels like a blur. Like it's hard to keep the years separate from what was going on. So has Sting or the band or anybody, how does that work with them listening to this? And how has any of that transpired?
I don't know.
Hasn't really happened yet.
Okay.
It's funny, what, we have this electronics company, and our clients are top people in the industry. I mean, we can pretty much get to almost anybody with 2 degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's easy for us to get to just about anybody, and except Sting, I guess. And actually, we do have people in common with Sting as well, more than 2, I'd say.
Yeah.
But we just haven't gotten there yet.
So, it's always interesting when an artist puts their own spin on something that's obviously as iconic as Synchronicity. What are you hoping ultimately the listener gets from this, from your spin, your interpretation of this album?
Well, the original album, the songs are amazing, but I don't know when the last time you listened to it is. At least, and I would say this is a lot more, leans a lot more toward what you might get off iTunes or a CD. It sounds terrible. Like the audio. I mean, we're older. We're not into like going out to clubs and hearing bad rock bands. We build the best audio recording equipment in the world because we have to, because no one else is doing it, and we want to make good sounding recordings. And the original album just sounds terrible.
It's to be fair, it's a punk rock record from the 80s.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely brilliant, and it has a sound, and the sound is super effective. And I mean, we loved it.
And I'm sure it translates better on vinyl. Like if we went back to the 1980s and you threw it on in context of the time, and I'm sure it's an amazing, incredible sounding album. But you hop in your Lexus and you want to relax on your way home from work, and you don't want to like get a headache listening to music. You want to listen to something nice.
It doesn't stream well anymore. My wife's car, when I started it, the satellite radio comes up automatically, and it's often set to the 80 station, and they're often playing tracks off of Synchronicity because it's one of the most iconic records of the time. And it just doesn't stream well at all. I mean, I get ahead in a few seconds, and I think that's a larger conversation about where things have gone in the music business and stuff, which we'd love to talk about ad nauseum whenever you'd like.
Yeah.
You probably don't want us to do that here.
But so if we can take that, the core essence of that amazing album and bring it to people in a format that is like really enjoyable to listen to. You know, that's something we're sort of aiming to do.
Yeah,
You know?
given today's context and today's dissemination formats and
Yeah, that makes sense. What's been the reaction with you doing this live? Have you been doing it live for people?
We did one.
Well, we've done that. We've played through it for a while.
Yeah, I guess we've done two sort of intimate concerts recently, and yeah, the reaction was better than I thought possible, even actually. In fact, yeah, it was really, really great.
Yeah.
So who have been influences for you guys for your sound? Who have been seminal in your lives?
Whoa, that's a long list.
Yeah.
Well, so I grew up playing harpsichord. That was my primary training. Started when I was 3 on harpsichord, and so I kind of was a bit of a failed child prodigy. You know, I hit 15 and things just came unraveled, and then it was rock bands, and I started studying jazz with Laurie Altman, and Geoff was a violinist, and so I mean that's kind of a different place to come from, I think, and then probably for both of us, our first artist that we were really into was Men at Work.
Yeah.
So we love Colin Hay. We're friends with Colin Hay. He's a client of ours, and we try to see him every time he comes, close to here, and we've seen him at Steel Stacks in Bethlehem, but I don't know. I mean, later on in the jazz world, what would you say?
Well, we don't have a lot of jazz influences.
No, that's not true. We have a lot of jazz.
Do we?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I think we have more pop rock influence.
I don't know. I mean, okay. Keith Jarrett, Chick Corea,
Wayne Shorter,
yeah, Miles, a lot of contemporary stuff, because we've done a lot of work in contemporary jazz too, like Marcus Miller, George Duke, Frank Zappa. As far as the jazz trio is concerned, sonics of that, I would say Vince Guaraldi and Ahmad Jamal.
Yeah.
Ahmad Jamal has this thing about, I don't know, just being able to play very little and really thought out things, really powerful harmonics, but understated, and the whole time, his rhythm section is just doing what rhythm sections are supposed to do.
Yeah.
And it's engaging, he's not hitting you with a million notes a second and like this amazing technical whatever that you get out, it's like YouTube jazz,
But it's sort of like pop music too. I mean, Vince Guaraldi, who doesn't love that? I mean, it's all singable. You can sing all solos.
Yeah.
You can,
all the melodies.
And I think that that's been a driving aesthetic for us.
And actually, I was just sorry to cut you off, but funny, like I think the Vince Guaraldi thing is a good example of it. It seems very simple, you listen to it, and it seems it's easily accessible. It seems very simple. If you dig into those arrangements and try to play some of that stuff, there's some serious stuff happening there.
Oh yeah. Oh, I have no doubt. Yeah. And I think that was one of his frustrations, was that he got kind of woven into this pop culture icon, and his stature as a musician wasn't taken as seriously. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that he was definitely necessarily downgraded by his peers, but I think overall people like, oh yeah, that's the dude that does the Peanuts, and he's a serious dude putting out like hardcore work. So I think there was a part of that. I remember looking into his background where his psyche was definitely affected by that notion.
Yeah, see, I think that's a shame, because I think that when you've really hit the mark is when your, you know, whatever it is that you do intersects with what is really relevant in culture and can be consumed by the masses. And I mean, there's tons of complicated stuff that does that. I mean, arguably the most, you know, recognizable jazz tune of all time is Take Five, and it's odd metered.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think he set out to make some pop hit, but you know, it just hit that intersection.
Yeah. I just remembered an interview I had with his son Chris, and he was talking about how they used to go out on the road with him, and they would kind of bemoan a little bit to go out and to carry the equipment, all that. I'm just sitting there thinking, man, it's Dave Brubeck. Are you kidding me? If I could maybe fly on the wall to hear one of those. But I guess early in his life, he broke his back. He had a weird incident, and he couldn't really carry his equipment, and they were talking about that. But anyways, to catch Dave one time, but you know, when you're a kid, when you're their kid, it's like you're around it all the time. That's all you're hearing. You don't know any different. So let me ask you this: if anyone out there wants to pick up this album, which to me, I remember doing the monologue on this on the show. I couldn't believe it's been 40 years. Like, to just say that Synchronicity's been out for 40 years really either makes me feel old or makes me think, is that true? You know, it's
Right.
weird.
Yeah, time flies when you're having fun, right?
That's right. It certainly does. So if anyone wants to pick up this album, see you do it live, anything pertaining to your business, anything pertaining to you guys, where do they go?
Well, we're trying something a little bit new because the jazz industry is just not in a great place, and poor audio is to blame for a lot of it. You know, people, the iPad or the iPod came out, what, 15, 20, 25 years ago?
Yeah.
And people don't realize that they like the convenience of all the songs, but they don't know how terrible a sounding unit that thing is.
Yeah.
And the whole ecosystem, not to get down on Apple or anything, but that sort of the iTunes bit that goes with that, it's just not a quality listening experience. So so we're doing a couple of things to sort of do what we can to control that. So to find our music, you can go to our website, hazelriggbrothers.com.
Or actually, more to the point, outermarkerrecords.com.
Okay.
We've started a record label with our team actually at Hazelrigg Industries here in order to be able to release all these recordings that we do ourselves, and with Doug Fern, who's, you know, legendary, and so that's a good place to go. So outermarkerrecords.com.
But so you can get we have a CD available to order. We have plans for vinyl. That's a whole other conversation.
Sure.
And then our main digital online source is Native DSD, and they're based in Amsterdam. And we've released the album on 2 high resolution formats. One is 96 kilohertz PCM, which anyone can download that and play it on their computer or phone or anything. And then we're fanatical, and it's a thing that takes another bit of explanation if you don't know about it, but we released it on DSD 128, and that's sort of the most high resolution experience that you can get for this album.
Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you for opening up. Thank you for your time talking about the project and your life and music. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Thanks, Joe.
You bet.